There are faces on screen that we come to know, actors who feel less like distant stars and more like familiar souls. We watch them grow, we see their talent blossom, and in a way we feel a part of their journey. But sometimes that journey is cut tragically, unthinkably short, leaving behind a silence where a vibrant voice once was. It leaves us with a collection of moments, of performances frozen in time, and the haunting question of what could have been. Today we're going to talk about one of those souls. A young man with an old world wisdom in his eyes and a fire of pure, unadulterated passion for his craft. He was an artist in the truest sense of the word, a photographer, a musician, a voracious student of cinema, and an actor of breathtaking sensitivity and range. His name was Anton Yelchin. Many of us remember him as the brilliant, endearingly flustered Chekov from the rebooted Star Trek films. But his story is so much deeper, richer, and ultimately more heartbreaking than any single role. It's a story that begins not under the bright lights of Hollywood, but in the fading twilight of an empire, a story of immense sacrifice, prodigious talent, and a fate so cruel and bizarre, it almost defies belief. This isn't just the story of a talented actor we lost. It's the story of a remarkable life, lived with an intensity and purpose that belied his years. To truly understand Anton, we have to travel back to where his story began, not in California, but thousands of miles away in a city then known as Leningrad in the Soviet Union. Anton was born on March 11th in 1989. For those of us who remember, this was a period of immense global tension and transformation. The Berlin Wall had not yet fallen, but the cracks in the Soviet monolith were beginning to show. It was a world of stark contrast to the West, a place of artistic expression heavily managed by the state, where individual ambition often took a back seat to the collective. Into this world, Anton was born to Irina Korina and Viktor Yelchin. His parents weren't dissidents or politicians. They were celebrities of a different sort, stars in the highly demanding and revered world of Soviet pairs figure skating. They were the lead skaters of the Leningrad Ice Ballet for 15 years, national icons who had reached the pinnacle of their sport. Their lives were a whirlwind of grueling training, precise choreography, and the pressure of representing a superpower on the world stage. Imagine the discipline, the sheer physical and mental fortitude required. They were artists on ice. Their performances a blend of athletic prowess and graceful storytelling. But beneath the surface of their success, there was a growing unease. As Jewish people in the Soviet Union, the Yelchins faced systemic anti-Semitism. Opportunities were often curtailed, and a ceiling was placed on their ambitions. Despite their fame, they were not truly Chi. They had qualified for the 1972 Winter Olympics, a dream for any athlete, but were reportedly barred from competing, a decision they believed was rooted in their heritage. This was the silent, pervasive reality for many in their position. As they looked at their infant son, Anton, they saw not just a beloved child, but a future, and they began to question what that future would look like within the confines of the Soviet system. They saw the limitations they had faced and knew they wanted something more for him, the freedom to choose his own path, to speak his mind, to become whoever he wanted to be without prejudice. So they made a decision that can only be described as an act of profound courage and love. In September 1989, when Anton was just 6 months old, they applied for political asylum and left everything they had ever known behind. They were leaving behind their careers, their families, their language, their culture, and the status they had worked their entire lives to achieve. They arrived in the United States as political refugees with very little money and a baby in their arms, trading the familiar gray skies of Leningrad for the sun-drenched uncertainty of Los Angeles. Victor once a celebrated athlete, took a job as a factory worker. Irina began coaching young skaters. They sacrificed their own stardom, their own comfort, for the intangible promise of their son's freedom. This incredible act of parental love is the foundation stone of Anton Yelchin's entire story. It was the first and perhaps most significant gift they ever gave him, a blank canvas in a new world. Growing up in the San Fernando Valley, a world away from the Soviet ice rinks of his parents' past, Anton was a curious and incredibly bright child. He absorbed the new culture around him, but he also carried with him the intellectual rigor and artistic sensibility that was his birthright. He wasn't a typical LA kid, obsessed with video games and blockbuster movies, though he loved film. His parents noticed early on that he had a unique intensity, a deep well of emotion that he was learning to channel. His journey into acting began almost by chance. He wasn't pushed into it by ambitious parents. In fact, they were somewhat wary of the industry. It was Anton who expressed the desire. He saw a film and was captivated, not by the action or the special effects, but by the performance, the act of becoming someone else. He enrolled in an acting class, and it was immediately clear that this was more than a childhood hobby. He had a naturalism and an emotional intelligence that was rare in someone so young. He started landing small roles in television shows and independent films in the late 1990s. But the moment the world truly took notice of the prodigious talent of Anton Yelchin came in 2001 with the film Hearts in Atlantis. Based on a novella by Stephen King, the film tells the story of a young boy, Bobby Garfield, whose life is irrevocably changed by a mysterious and psychically gifted boarder named Ted Brodigan. The role of Ted was played by one of the greatest actors of our time, Sir Anthony Hopkins. For any child actor, the prospect of sharing the screen with a titan like Hopkins would be daunting, even terrifying. Many would be overwhelmed, their performance swallowed by the sheer presence of such a seasoned professional. But not Anton. At just 11 years old, he didn't just hold his own. He created a beautiful symbiotic performance with Hopkins. He wasn't acting at him, he was acting with him. There's a quiet, profound connection between them. Anton portrays Bobby's loneliness, his curiosity, and his fierce loyalty with a subtlety that is astonishing for his age. He conveys a universe of feeling with just a glance, a slight hesitation in his voice, or the way he holds his body. He wasn't a cute kid reciting lines. He was a serious actor engaged in a complex emotional dance. The director, Scott Hicks, recalled being blown away by Anton's audition. He said Anton had an old soul quality, a maturity and understanding that was far beyond his years. Anthony Hopkins was equally impressed, later stating that Anton was a brilliant actor and that working with him was an inspiration. Hopkins isn't known for dispensing praise lightly. For him to recognize that kind of talent in an 11-year-old speaks volumes. The critical reception was effusive. Reviewers praised Anton's performance as the heart and soul of the film. He won the Young Artist Award for Best Performance in a Feature Film, but more importantly, he had established himself as a formidable talent, an actor to watch. Hearts in Atlantis wasn't just a breakthrough role, it was a declaration of intent. It showed the depth he was capable of and set the stage for a career defined by its remarkable diversity and artistic integrity. He had taken the blank canvas his parents had given him and was beginning to paint a masterpiece. After the resounding success of Hearts in Atlantis, Anton Yelchin could have easily been typecast. The path for a gifted child actor in Hollywood is often a predictable one, leading to a string of family-friendly comedies or teen dramas. But Anton's artistic compass pointed in a different direction. He possessed an insatiable curiosity and a genuine aversion to repeating himself. He was drawn to the complex, the messy, the challenging roles that would push him to explore the less comfortable corners of the human experience. His career throughout his teenage years and into his early 20s became a fascinating tapestry of bold choices, showcasing a versatility that was truly staggering. One of the most significant and jarring turns came in 2006 with the film Alpha Dog. Directed by Nick Cassavetes, it was a raw, gritty, and deeply disturbing look at a real-life kidnapping and murder that had taken place in Southern California. Anton played Zach Mazursky, the teenage victim, a character based on the real Nicholas Markowitz. This was not a sanitized Hollywood portrayal of a crime. The film was visceral, chaotic, and unflinching in its depiction of suburban nihilism. Anton's performance was nothing short of a revelation. He captured Zach's desperate desire for acceptance, his naivete, and his tragic vulnerability with a heartbreaking authenticity. In the film, Zach is held captive for several days, but because his captors are little more than directionless, party-obsessed kids themselves, a strange, almost Stockholm-like bond begins to form. Anton navigated these complex emotional shifts with incredible skill. You see the fear in his eyes, but you also see his yearning to belong, his fleeting moments of connection with the very people who hold his life in their hands. The film's climax is brutal and unforgettable. Anton's portrayal of Zach's final moments is almost unbearable to watch because of its stark realism. He doesn't play it for melodrama. He plays it with a quiet, terrified resignation that stays with you long after the credits roll. It was a fearless performance that announced his definitive transition from child actor to a serious dramatic force. He proved he was unafraid to dive into the darkest aspects of a character, to make himself vulnerable in the service of a difficult story. Just a year later, in 2007, he pivoted completely with Charlie Bartlett. If Alpha Dog was a descent into darkness, Charlie Bartlett was a brilliantly witty and subversive comedy. Anton played the title role, a precocious and wealthy teenager who, after being expelled from every private school imaginable, is forced to attend a public high school. Feeling like an outsider, he devises a unique way to gain popularity. He sets up a psychiatric practice in the boys' bathroom, dispensing advice and prescription drugs. He coaxes from his own therapist. The role required a delicate balance. Charlie could have easily come across as arrogant or unlikable, but Anton imbued him with a quirky charm, a deep-seated loneliness, and a genuine, albeit misguided, desire to help his peers. His comedic timing was impeccable, and he had a magnetic, fast-talking energy that was reminiscent of a young Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate. He was navigating complex dialogue and sophisticated themes with an ease that was mesmerizing to watch. He also held his own opposite Robert Downey Jr., who played the beleaguered school principal. Their scenes together are a masterclass in witty repartee. Charlie Bartlett proved that Anton had exceptional comedic chops and a leading man charisma that was entirely his own. He continued to choose eclectic projects, from the coming-of-age drama Fierce People to the crime thriller Middle of Nowhere. He seemed to be on a mission to build a filmography that was as diverse and interesting as his own intellectual pursuits. Then, in 2011, came a film that would become a touchstone for a generation grappling with the realities of modern love. Like Crazy, directed by Drake Doremus, Like Crazy was an independent film with a very small budget and a largely improvised script. It tells the story of Jacob, an American student, and Anna, a British student, who fall deeply in love, only to be separated when Anna violates her visa and is barred from returning to the United States. The film is a raw, intimate, and often painfully realistic portrayal of the joys and sorrows of a long-distance relationship. The improvisational nature of the film meant that everything depended on the chemistry between the two leads. And the chemistry between Anton and his co-star, Felicity Jones, was electric. Their connection felt utterly real and unscripted because, in many ways, it was. They built their characters' relationship from the ground up, drawing on their own experiences and emotions. Anton's performance as Jacob is a masterwork of subtlety. You see his deep love for Anna, but also his frustration, his loneliness, and the slow erosion of their bond over time and distance. He conveys so much through silence, a pained expression, a lingering glance, the way his shoulders slump in defeat. It's a quiet, introspective performance that is devastating in its emotional honesty. The film won the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival, and much of that was due to the powerful, authentic performances of its two leads. Like Crazy cemented Anton's reputation as one of the most sensitive and emotionally resonant actors of his generation. He had a unique ability to tap into the fragile beauty and the inherent sadness of the human experience. And then came the Starship. In 2009, when director J.J. Abrams took on the monumental task of rebooting the Star Trek franchise, the casting was everything. He needed actors who could honor the iconic legacy of the original cast while bringing a fresh, new energy to the roles. For the part of the brilliant young navigator Pavel Chekov, he chose Anton Yelchin. It was an inspired choice. The character of Chekov, originally played by Walter Koenig, was known for his thick, often comically exaggerated Russian accent and his youthful exuberance. Anton, being of Russian heritage himself, could have easily leaned into a caricature, but he approached the role with the same intellectual rigor he brought to all his work. He wanted to create a character that was both a loving tribute and a believable modern interpretation. He famously decided to thicken the Russian accent beyond his own natural, very slight one, reasoning that Chekov was meant to be a bit of a prodigy, perhaps even younger than he looked, and his accent was part of that youthful identity. He delivered his lines with a rapid-fire intensity that perfectly captured Chekov's genius and his occasional panic. His delivery of the line, "I can do that," became an instant fan favorite. But beyond the accent and the humor, Anton brought a real heart to Chekov. He made him a vital and beloved member of the Enterprise crew. You believed in his intelligence, you felt his loyalty to his friends, and you rooted for him. He was the brilliant, sometimes overwhelmed younger brother of the crew, and he fit into the ensemble perfectly. He reprised the role in Star Trek Into Darkness, 2013, and Star Trek Beyond, 2016, which would tragically be his final film appearance released in his lifetime. For millions of people around the world, Anton Yelchin was Pavel Chekov. He had taken a beloved character and made him entirely his own, introducing him to a whole new generation of fans. Looking back at this period of his career, from the darkness of Alpha Dog to the vastness of space and Star Trek, what is most striking is the complete absence of ego in his work. He served the story, he served the character, and he was a generous scene partner. He was building one of the most interesting and unpredictable filmographies of any actor of his generation. And he was only just getting started. To truly understand the depth of the loss of Anton Yelchin, we have to look beyond the screen. While his filmography is a testament to his immense talent, his life off camera reveals a person of even greater substance and complexity. He wasn't just an actor who showed up, said his lines, and went home. He was a restless, voracious artist, a true intellectual, and by all accounts, a profoundly kind and gentle soul. His passions ran deep, and they informed every aspect of his creative life. One of his greatest passions was photography, This wasn't a casual hobby. It was a serious artistic pursuit. He shot primarily on film, drawn to the texture and the deliberate process it required. His photographs are haunting, intimate, and often unsettling. He was drawn to the strange and the surreal, capturing provocative and sometimes explicit scenes in the seedy, forgotten corners of the San Fernando Valley. His work was not about creating pretty pictures. It was about exploring a mood, a feeling, the darker, more ambiguous side of life. He would spend hours in his darkroom, developing his own prints, meticulously controlling the process from start to finish. There was a solitary, introspective nature to his photography that seemed to be a necessary counterbalance to the collaborative world of filmmaking. It was his own private universe, a space where he had complete creative control. Looking at his photos, you see the same sensitivity and keen eye for human frailty that he brought to his acting roles. A posthumous exhibition of his work, titled Provocative, showcased his unique vision and solidified his reputation as a gifted photographer. Music was another essential outlet for his creative energy. He was the guitarist for a punk rock band called the Hammerheads. The music was loud, aggressive, and raw, a stark contrast to his often quiet and sensitive on-screen persona. But it made perfect sense. Punk rock at its core is about authenticity, about a rejection of artifice, and that was something that defined Anton. He loved the raw energy, the catharsis of playing loud, fast music with his friends. It wasn't about fame or landing a record deal. It was about the pure, uninhibited joy of creation. His bandmates described him as a talented and dedicated musician, someone who brought the same level of commitment to a band practice as he did to a film set. Perhaps most defining of all was his encyclopedic knowledge and profound love of cinema. He was a true cinephile. His friends and colleagues consistently recall his ability to discuss film on a deeply academic level. He could break down the filmography of obscure European directors, debate the nuances of different cinematic movements, and recommend films you had never heard of, but desperately needed to see. This wasn't about showing off. It stemmed from a genuine, unquenchable thirst for knowledge. His parents nurtured this love from a young age. They would watch classic films together, discussing them afterward. This became the foundation of his own cinematic education. He was constantly reading, constantly watching, constantly learning. Director Drake Doremus remembered that during the making of Like Crazy, Anton would give him lists of films to watch for inspiration. He wasn't just an actor, he was a student of the art form, and that deep well of knowledge enriched every performance he gave. He understood the language of film on an intuitive level. Despite his intelligence and his serious artistic pursuits, what people who knew him mention most often is his kindness, his humility, and his infectious, goofy laugh. He was described as an old soul in a young body, someone who was incredibly thoughtful and present. In the often superficial world of Hollywood, he was known for his authenticity. He treated everyone, from the biggest movie star to the production assistant, with the same level of respect. There's a beautiful anecdote from his Star Trek co-star, John Cho, who played Sulu. Cho recalled that during a press tour, he was feeling down and missing his family. Anton, noticing his mood, simply came and sat with him in silence for a long time, offering a quiet, supportive presence. It was a small act, but it spoke volumes about his empathy and his gentle nature. He was incredibly close to his parents, Irina and Victor. He spoke to them every day. The profound sacrifice they had made for him was never lost on him. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and responsibility to make the most of the opportunities they had given him. Their home was a sanctuary for him, a place filled with books and art and intellectual conversation. His success was their success, and he carried their hopes and dreams with him in everything he did. This portrait of Anton, the photographer, the musician, the cinephile, the loyal son, the kind friend, is essential to understanding the man behind the roles. He was not just a vessel for characters, he was a deeply thoughtful and multifaceted artist whose own rich inner world informed the depth and humanity we saw on screen. He was living a life dedicated to art and connection, a life filled with purpose and an endless curiosity. And that is what makes the final chapter of his story so utterly, devastatingly senseless. The morning of June 19th, 2016 began like any other Sunday in Los Angeles. But for the friends and family of Anton Yelchin, it would become a day of unimaginable horror. Anton was scheduled to meet friends for a rehearsal. When he didn't show up and wasn't answering his phone, a few of them, growing concerned, went to his home in Studio City to check on him. What they found was a scene of surreal and incomprehensible tragedy. The security gate at the bottom of his steep driveway was shut, and pinned between the gate's brick pillar and the rear of his own 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee was Anton. He was unresponsive. The engine of the car was still running. The initial shock gave way to a desperate attempt to understand what could have possibly happened. The Los Angeles Police Department was called to the scene, and an investigation began. The conclusion they reached was as bizarre as it was heartbreaking. It appeared that Anton had gotten out of his vehicle for some reason, perhaps to check the mail at the bottom of his driveway or to close the gate. And the car, which he likely believed was in park, had rolled backward down the steep incline, crushing him against the pillar and fence. The official cause of death was ruled as blunt traumatic asphyxia. It was a freak accident, a 1 in a million chance event. But as the dust settled, a deeply disturbing context began to emerge. This wasn't just a case of user error or a tragic random fluke. Anton's vehicle, the 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee, was at the center of a major controversy and a massive recall. The issue was with its electronic gear shifter, a new design that was meant to be sleek and modern. Unlike a traditional gear shifter that clicks into distinct physical positions, this one was a monostable shifter. You would nudge it forward or backward to select a gear, but it would always spring back to a central position. The only indication of what gear you were in was a small light on the console. The design proved to be dangerously confusing for many drivers. There were hundreds of documented complaints filed with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, from people who thought they had put the car in park when it was actually in neutral or reverse. They would get out of their vehicles, only to have them roll away. There were dozens of reported injuries, crashes, broken bones, all linked to this counterintuitive design. In April 2016, just 2 months before Anton's death, Fiat Chrysler, the parent company of Jeep, had issued a recall for over 1.1 million vehicles, including the model that Anton owned. The recall was to install a software update that would automatically shift the car into park if the driver's door was opened while the engine was running. However, the recall notices were slow to go out, and the fix was not yet widely available. It is unclear if Anton had received the notice or was aware of the specific danger his car posed. Suddenly, his death was cast in a new light. It wasn't just a freak accident. It was a potentially preventable tragedy, the direct result of a flawed and dangerous product design. The news sent a shockwave of grief and anger through the public. This wasn't a random act of fate. It was a failure of corporate responsibility that had cost a brilliant young man his life. The grief of his parents, Irina and Victor, was unimaginable. The child for whom they had sacrificed everything, their only son, had been taken from them in the most brutal and senseless way. But in their profound sorrow, they found an incredible strength. They were determined that their son's death would not be in vain. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Fiat Chrysler, not just for financial compensation, but for accountability. In a tearful press conference, his father Victor said, "In spite of our unbelievable grief, we decided to come here to prevent other families from the same tragedy. Anton was our only son, and he was a remarkable human being. It is wrong. It is against nature when parents bury their own child." Their lawsuit alleged that the company had long been aware of the dangerous design of the gear shifter, but had been slow to act, prioritizing profits over safety. The legal battle brought the issue to the forefront of national conversation. It highlighted the devastating human cost of design flaws and the importance of timely and effective recalls. In 2018, the Yelchin family reached a confidential settlement with Fiat Chrysler. While the terms were not disclosed, it provided a measure of justice and closure for his grieving parents. But no settlement could ever fill the void left by his absence. They had lost their son, and the world had lost an artist of singular talent. The tragic irony that a life so full of purpose and creativity was ended by a moment of mechanical ambiguity is a detail that remains hauntingly painful. Anton Yelchin, at the age of 27, became a tragic member of the so-called 27 Club. But unlike the rock stars who died from excess, his death was a brutal, random, and utterly senseless intrusion of mechanical failure into a life of art. The death of a promising young artist always leaves a profound void, but the passing of Anton Yelchin felt particularly cruel. It wasn't the result of a long illness or a self-destructive lifestyle. It was a sudden, violent, and utterly preventable accident that ripped him from the world just as his artistic powers were reaching their full stride. The aftermath was a period of deep mourning, not just for his family and friends, but for the entire film community and the countless fans who had been touched by his work. The consequences of his death were felt immediately, and his significance has only grown in the years since. Those who loved him felt a deep need to share the story of the man they knew, the brilliant, funny, intellectually curious, and deeply kind person behind the famous face. This led to the creation of the 2019 documentary Love and Tosha. Directed by Garrett Price and produced by his friend Drake Doremus, the film is a beautiful, intimate, and often heartbreaking portrait of his life and career, narrated through his own journals and letters, and featuring interviews with his parents, co-stars like Kristen Stewart, Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pine, and directors like J.J. Abrams and Jodie Foster. The film is a powerful testament to the impact he had on everyone he met. It delves into his passions for photography and music, his deep love for his parents, and it also reveals a private struggle that few knew about. From a young age, Anton lived with cystic fibrosis, a genetic disorder that affects the lungs and digestive system. He never spoke about it publicly, not wanting it to define him or limit his opportunities. This revelation added another layer of poignancy to his story. It recontextualized his relentless drive and his insatiable appetite for life and art. He was living with a chronic illness, yet he attacked every day with a fierce creative energy, perhaps knowing on some level that his time might be limited. The documentary is not just a tribute, it's an inspiration, a call to live life with the same passion and curiosity that he did. So why does he still matter? Why does his story continue to resonate so deeply? It's because he represents something rare and precious. In an industry that often celebrates celebrity over substance, Anton was the real deal. He was a pure artist, driven not by fame or money, but by a genuine love for the craft. He made bold, unconventional choices, constantly challenging himself and his audience. He left behind a body of work that is rich, diverse, and filled with performances that continue to move and inspire us. His legacy is a challenge to all of us. It challenges us to pursue our passions with integrity, to treat others with kindness and respect, and to approach the world with an open heart and a curious mind. He was a reminder that the most profound connections are often the quietest ones, and that true artistry lies in honesty and vulnerability. Anton Yelchin was a rare talent, and by all accounts, an even rarer soul. He was a bright light in a world that can often seem dark. And while we will always mourn the films he never got to make, the photographs he never got to take, and the life he never got to live, we can also be profoundly grateful for the incredible body of work he left behind. His spark was unique, and it will not be forgotten. Thank you for joining me in remembering him.